And they literally just put onto.
Welcome to Mapping Content Strategy on Customer Journeys. We're very excited to have a tag team from SmartBear software here today. Gary DeAsi, I want to get your title right, Senior Manager, Digital Marketing Branch. And Brian Pinkham, who's the Content Marketing Manager, and they're going to talk to you about the customer journey. Right. Thank you, guys.
Hello, how's it going, guys? Excited to be here to chat with you guys about content marketing and the customer journey. I want to just quickly ask if you wouldn't mind holding your questions to the end. Excited to chat and have discussion with you. We'll be sure to save some time to get through as many questions as possible. And I want to hear about what you guys are doing some of this as well. If you aren't familiar with SmartBear, we basically exist because the world runs on software. Right, so every business, every person relies on software to be working and working well at all times. We have over 15 software quality tools, which we market to software developers, testers, IT operations folks, companies of all shapes and sizes all over the world. So a lot of our products are also very different. We market to them, again, to different audiences. They're in different markets. So our customer journeys are very different as well, and therefore our content strategies have to be too. So our marketing organization, we have 28 team members. Now, we have a pretty interesting org structure, organized both vertically and functionally. So for each of our 4 key market verticals, we have teams dedicated who are responsible for driving business for those products within the market. And we also have functional teams that work across all the products. Our demand gen team, which I manage, works across all the products, and we're responsible for the content strategy for all the products, which Ryan manages, and the content distribution for all of our products across the entire buyer journey. So, here to talk about content marketing. For many of us, content marketing is the engine to our digital marketing machines, right? So, but not everybody gets the same mileage out of it. So in a recent report from Content Marketing Institute, 88% of B2B companies are using content marketing, but only 30% of them said that they're doing it effectively. Right, so why is that? The report also found that those that were most effective with content marketing were those that had a well-documented approach and strategy, and also had the most clarity on what success looks like. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because otherwise, if you're just throwing content at the wall and seeing what sticks, of course you're more likely to be missing the mark more of the time. And as a result, your marketing targets and goals. We have a lot of Nerf Gun Wars at SmartBear. These pellets are absolutely everywhere. We just moved desks. Our VP of product for one of our markets, this is exactly what my drawer looks like when we moved. So these things are everywhere, and this is going to be a pretty random and weird analogy, but I wouldn't be myself if I didn't have 1 or 2 of these in the presentation. Unlike our Nerf guns, with content, we do not have an unlimited supply of ammo, right? So, and I don't know about you guys, but we can't afford to be investing all this time, resources, and budget in producing all this content and distributing all this content if it's not giving us a positive ROI and the results that we need to drive the business. So we need to be smart about our content. Excuse me. We need to be smart about our content to protect our investment, and we need to be calculated in our plans and calculated in our approach, and also really have an understanding of what our objectives are, so that we can be in that 30% that are effective, which means no random acts of content. We aren't creating content for the sake of creating content, right? It's our belief that every content initiative should have a purpose and an objective. And today we're going to talk about really how, by aligning content strategy with the customer journey, we're able to help. That helps us maximize our yield and the results from the content that we're creating. So before I turn it over to Ryan, to talk about how we go about creating these plans in line with the customer journey. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about adopting a model for stages, and also some key factors to keep in consideration. So I can't dive really deep in these next couple of slides. If you guys want to come back to this in the discussion, absolutely can. But I really wanted to include this because this stuff is super important for you to understand what your customer journey looks like. And also, this stuff can really change your approach to your content strategies. So, of course, starting with the individual, understanding your customer's characteristics on the individual level and the organizational level, right? And some of these are the more obvious ones, different personas, different pain points. Also, different terminology and language, right? So as we see in search, a lot of the time our customers are using different terms to look for a solution than we are all the time. So we have to understand that. And then a couple, like these two down here in the little box, which I put in the box because technically that could be related to the organization as well. But buying triggers. What are the events? What are the common events that can set our customers off on a buying cycle? And how do we solve the problem before, right? Or cope with it? These are really, really important things to understand. Some other things that we look at are that will change your approach and change, how you understand the customer journey is characteristics of our business. So, of course, for all of our products, they're all very, very different, right? And in the sales model and purchasing process, whether we have products that are subscription products, we have fixed licenses, we have usage-based pricing. Sales cycles can range from 14 days to 3 months, cost a few $100 to tens of thousands, right? So very, very different scenarios. And the market landscape, the maturity of the market. Any of you guys using or familiar with SiriusDecision's demand type spectrum? This is a great example. I'm sure Casey is. But this is a good example of something that it makes a big, big difference. So demand type from SiriusDecisions tells us there's 3 main demand types, right, for your market. You could be an established market, like a CRM, where the majority of the market already understands the value, and a lot of them are probably already using a competitor like Salesforce, right? And then you have a new paradigm where, like Salesforce when it first came to market, really reinventing and disrupting the current status quo of how we're solving that problem. And then you have a new concept market where you're basically trying to market a solution to people who don't even know they have that problem yet, right? So your approach to those 3 different demand types will be completely different. So lots of factors to consider. Some of those might be more important to your guys' business than others. And those are a lot of the things that we're thinking about that will change our strategies. And also, we even recently, to help with this, because they're so different, we have wiki pages. We call them customer journey battle cards. And all that information for the last couple of slides, we fill that out for each product. And then you have all the information in one place. And that helps Ryan in his content plans, but also the entire team who's aligned with content distribution. So extracting from all this information, we have a lot of intelligence now about the customer journey. And that's really what we use to make smarter content. And understand things like barriers to overcome with our content and questions that we need to answer with our content. And that's critical because, as you guys know, a lot of our customers control their own journeys, and the majority of the journey is happening online. It's self-guided, right? without ever, before they ever interact with a person. So we rely on our content to help them navigate those journeys and overcome obstacles and move along. So our content is really what's key to the success of whether they continue down that path. And overcome obstacles, which there are many, on the long road to advocacy, which for us is the ultimate destination of the customer journey. But, as you also know, over time, those questions, those barriers that we need to overcome for our customers change as they go through the different stages. So we need to understand that, and the way we understand that, we use customer journey models, right? How many of you guys are using something similar to one of these up here? There's a lot of them out there. Love to hear about some of your guys' experiences with them. We borrowed a bunch of different aspects from a bunch of these different models, and I created a custom model that we use at SmartBear for all of our products that I'm going to walk through here in just a second. And a couple factors that were important to us were, one, really focusing more beyond the point of purchase. So on existing customers and all the way throughout until advocacy, right? So I think a lot of the models out there don't focus enough beyond point of sale. Another big factor was being more granular. We have 10 total stages, and with that granularity, that really helps us understand what are the questions, what are those barriers, and what are the objectives we need to accomplish with our content at each specific stage. So walking through, starting at the top, we have engagement stage, which is all about brand awareness. Here, as I go through, this is from the customer POV, the questions that they're asking and the questions that Ryan needs to answer with his content. Right? So the engagement stage is the only stage for us that is not directly connected with the solution, the problem, or the product. Right? It's all about delivering value to the audience. Right? HubSpot, for example, is the king of this. Right? A lot of their content is just delivering value to us, right, to marketers, but not necessarily yet talking about what they're selling, right? So here we're casting a wide net and attracting our core audience, but a qualified audience is important to note. We're not just attracting anybody, we're attracting a large audience that could potentially buy eventually. And the goal here is really to, for more of our key target audiences to find us, to have a positive experience, and to want to come back, to want to have the door open to engage with us again. Then we get into the education stage, and here is where the customers are realizing that they have a problem that they need to solve, right? So from a content standpoint, a lot of the time we're focusing on pain points, challenges, solutions at a very high level. And when I say solution, I mean marketing automation is the Marketo, right? So an example at a high level is, why marketing automation, right? So once they realize they have a problem they need to solve, now we're in research. So what solutions are available? We're focusing on the benefits. What do I need to know? What options do I have? And then to evaluation. Here, and by the way, in research still, we're still usually focused mostly on the solution, not yet totally the product, right? Then on to evaluation. Here is where product takes over from here on out, all about the product. For us, and this is about the satisfaction of the needs. Does this product solve my problem, and does it fit my specific requirements? And for us, on our product sections of our website, most of that content's evaluation stage. Nurture content while they're in a free trial. It could also be a data sheet at a booth at a trade show, right? Does this solve my problem? Does it meet my requirements? On to justification. So So now we need to quantify the value and also and justify it and get internal buy-in. So a lot of times, that really common sales objection where they say not a good time or not a priority. A lot of the time that's just another way of saying they haven't been able to quantify the value, right? And then getting internal buy-in from other influencers and decision makers inside the company is huge. Here, case studies are like calculators, analyst reports, sell my boss documents. And then finally, we get to purchase, which is, okay, I'm sold. Now how do I get this? And how difficult would it be to change my current process? Right? So back to the marketing automation example, if we had to switch marketing automation system, that would be a huge deal, right? So that's a major barrier that you would need to overcome. Okay, so now we're in the green. So we have a new customer, and this is the first customer stage, and that's adoption. So once they get on board, they need to have, they need to know how to get up and running, get training from themselves and their team, and start realizing value as soon as possible. Then, when it comes to retention time to renewal, we need to make sure we retain them, and so this is all about customer success and customer satisfaction. So we need to show them that we care about their success, that there's long-term value, that, and it's really about customer love, right? So if we're successful there, now we're getting to the point of expansion. So now it's, what other problems can SmartBear help me solve? Right? Upsell and cross-sell. And then finally, we get to advocacy. And that's about loyalty and evangelism. And now at this point, finally the customer is saying, what can I do to help SmartBear? Because we've earned that, right? So this is the model that we're using. Looking forward to hearing more about the types of models that you guys have been using. Engagement to advocacy. One point is that it doesn't always start at the very top and go through all those stages. Prospects can enter any of those stages, but we'll table that for now because I want to turn it over to Ryan to talk about how he takes all of this information and actually puts it into action with his content plans. Excellent.
Yeah, so as Gary mentioned, my name is Ryan Pinkham and I manage the content for our team. I actually joined the SmartBear team about 4 months ago, and really right away we wanted to tackle content, and it was right at the same time that we were really implementing the customer journey. And as Gary talked about, we had these 4 markets that there's all these things that we wanted to do, all these new things we wanted to do, but one of the things I didn't want to fall into was this challenge that happens with content, where it's always kind of creating more, right? There's all these challenges, so kind of in the moment, you're thinking short term, and you're trying to create things to solve those problems. This is an analogy that I've created in magazines before, but the kind of idea of feeding the content beast, right? There's pressures all over the place for why you should be creating content. If you have a large marketing organization, this can come from all over the place. If you're within your group, right? If you have just a team who's doing social distribution or nurture, all these places just create more content. But what ends up happening a lot of the time is you start to lose track of what you really have, right? We're talking about the customer journey here. A lot of you might have customer journeys, but if you were to have to sit down and explain what content you have for each of those stages, if you have one, it might not be that easy, especially if you're a company that has a history, maybe you've gone through different marketing teams. There's a lot of content that you're going to have to keep track of, and you always seem to be doing all this stuff, but you keep running into the problem of people saying, why don't we have content about this thing? Why don't we hit this? So you want to get away from kind of just feeding this beast. And so one of the ways that we've looked to do this is to really start to align the content that we have in our strategy to the customer journey. So obviously you have kind of key metrics you're trying to drive depending on your business model or what you're trying to do, and you have clear goals in mind. Rather than just focusing on what we wanted to do next and the next big content assets we were going to do, we want to take the time to see what we already had available, right? We're implementing a customer journey, and we wanted to see how are we doing? How are we doing up to this point? How do we cover these things, right? We've known our customers are going through these different stages. What do we have for these customers today? And as we're planning going forward, are we factoring in all these stages? So while we're just trying to bring leads in, obviously, are we focusing all our effort there, or are we paying attention to what happens after we become customers? Are we making sure we have what people need? There's the task of starting to dig into the content. And what you'll quickly find in a lot of cases is that this stuff starts to add up over time, right? It could seem like a really daunting task, right? If you have a blog, you made blog posts, maybe you put out some ebooks over the years, or maybe they're still being produced and promoted out there. Chances are you've probably done some webinars that exist on your site somewhere. Maybe you're still using the recorded versions of those. Case studies, as we talked about, articles, infographics, videos, maybe SlideShare, tutorials. So all this content that exists, your product pages and stuff out there, and how do you make sense of everything? How do you organize it and start to look to the buyer's journey, customer journey, and start to map that stuff out? The process we took, the next slide, it's not going to be very pretty, but nobody wants another spreadsheet to manage. I could explain in a million ways how this is completely counterintuitive to how I typically think and approach things. But what we wanted to do was to get something that could be used and shared, that we could really get an actual audit of our content. So that it's not just the person you're hiring to be your content manager, to be the one person that knows the content, but that you actually have an asset that you could share with teams, that you could sit down with your market managers and say, okay, here's what we have. We're going to walk through the different stages as we talked about, so they can visually see what we have for content, because chances are it's scattered all throughout your website, maybe things that sales has that isn't posted online. And so we use a tool called Screaming Frog. Tool that basically just crawls your site and creates a spreadsheet of all the pages that are on your site. So then there was some work we had to do. So we wanted to have URLs, so we wanted our subdomain and domain, so we have blog, we have support, we have our main website, we have other websites associated with our products, so we wanted to be able to easily sort through that. We wanted to have content type, we wanted to know, do we have enough ebooks, articles, webinars, videos, what do we have that's out there? And then we wanted to fill in for our different products, so we have 4 markets, but there's multiple products throughout those markets. And we wanted to have the article web page title, again, because just organizing through URLs isn't really that user-friendly for anyone. And then there's a stage of mapping it to the customer journey. So again, this is a process that's going to take some time, and you want to map that out. But if you go through, especially for someone like myself who would, was new to the company, was really learning, it was a great opportunity for me to really dig in and see what content is there. And if you have people who are doing content for you, this is a great, not just an exercise, but I think a critical part of starting to plan your content marketing. I think it's critical that you know what you have available and what you've done before, so that when you start digging into this stuff, you get it's an asset that helps you answer some important questions right off the bat. You get an inventory of what you have, of course, but you also see, you can start to map this inventory to how things have performed. How long has that stuff been out there, right? When I went through this audit, I then had to sit down with some of the other marketing people who say, is this stuff still accurate? I mean, can we still use this? Did we get enough out of this when we created it? And then you can start thinking about distribution, how to optimize that content and what to do with it. But then you can also look at the buyer's journey, and you can start to identify those gaps that may or may not exist. Again, it's really easy a lot of times to focus on, especially when you're doing marketing, top of the funnel type stuff. But you may find opportunities where you have complete blank spots that you didn't think you were going to have. You say, oh, we have all these case studies, they're there. But then you start to dig in, and other justification stuff that you think would be just so essential isn't there. You may have salespeople that are on the phones talking and answering these questions, but there's never content created for it. And just think about how useful that content could be. So as we started to go through, so now having done the audit, what it allows you to do is to then take that and start planning things out. So kind of a high level example for us.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
How easy is it to determine the exact stage that each asset is in?
It's not super easy, right? Because you don't want to just say, oh, we're going through it, it's a blog post, that's going to be engagement, or it's an infographic, it's going to be engagement. So you do want someone that has at least some knowledge of your product or your market. But I do think with some basic knowledge and some basic training, you start to go through, and as you're going through, you start to get a sense, right? If it's a webinar, and the context of the webinar is around a product or a feature, you start to get a sense that that's more product focused, maybe it's evaluation, maybe it's research. I can say for me, one of the processes we went through was, again, this was a working process. I did this as someone managing the content, to then go to the product marketing managers to say, I'm going to present what I have here, but I want you to go through, I want you to give me feedback, because you know the market, you know your product better than anyone. And that was really helpful for us. So just a quick example here, so we're looking for one of our products. We found actually that we had a lot of the top of the funnel engagement content. But one of our big challenges we were still having was around traffic and generating leads. But what we found was that it wasn't that we didn't have enough, because again, it's not just adding up math. It was that some of the topics we were talking about just really weren't resonating. The performance wasn't there. It wasn't doing a good enough job of bringing those people in. So then we could start to plan our plans going forward, focus on that. What are those topics? How can we work on getting more people in through search? What are the things that are going to engage them a little bit better? And then how can we create that education content or research content that can be used to possibly put up a gate or generate leads from that engagement and start to bring in more qualified leads that way? And then of course, looking down the funnel, we're not ever stopping thinking about it. You might still focus most of your effort towards the top, but it gives you the chance to start factoring in that other stuff. And you're making decisions at this point, right? About topics, about formats, but also about budget and resources. You may find that, on our team, I'm really, at this point, in our core team, I'm the only one that's really actively creating content every day, and we work with some external writers to help support us, right? So we don't have a huge team doing this stuff, so we have to make those decisions based off of this, and that's how this helps us make that decision as well. So we're going to be moving on to kind of the next part of the presentation here, but I just want to take a moment to just make what I think is an important point in all of this, and that when you're creating this content, because again, I was saying right from the start, you don't want to just start creating new, but then all of a sudden I'm talking about creating these plans and what's the new stuff we're going to create. One of the other things I think you want to really factor in is how you can get the most out of every piece of content, right? So we might be creating a webinar, for example, that's really more evaluation focused. For example, this one here is about one of our new features. We create a webinar around that. But when you look at that webinar, within that webinar, there's a lot of best practice content that could probably create a great ebook or something that is more education focused, not even about the product yet. It's just a way of focusing more on what are the ideas behind the content of the webinar. And then from there, the series of blog posts was easy to create because that content was already created and you can share that out there. So you can see one piece of content that might have been originally focused on an evaluation stage a little bit lower down. Could easily be repurposed something you could use higher up, or you could probably take it the other direction as well. So big takeaway here. I honestly, for me, when it came down to sit down and do this stuff, I was really stressed about the idea of actually having to go through and do it. We wanted to move forward with our plans. We wanted to get running, and Gary did a great job of holding me back to say, listen, there's a great opportunity here. And so I just say that what you're going to get from this is you're just going to get a better understanding of your content, of what you have, what's performed well, and what you can be doing going forward. If it's not something you're going to prioritize today, put it on your roadmap as something you want to do. If you're a small team and you're trying to do content on the team without having content people, this is even more important. But if you are hiring someone to do content, I really do recommend this is something that you encourage them and try to push them to do. And really empower them to do that, because I think your content strategy going forward is going to be a lot better. So in the last stage, I think we're just going to talk quickly about how you can start to align the content you create into distribution, how you're going to get it out there. I'm going to talk quickly just about how we handle where content is housed on our website, so people can easily find it. I think Gary's going to go into a little bit more detail about distribution quickly as we wrap up here. So for us, a lot of the things we talked about, ebooks, webinars, even videos, we created in our resource section on our main website here. And what it allows you to do is that while a lot of people are going to come through individual assets, they may come through, if they're searching for what is code review, they may come in there, but you want them to become into a content ecosystem where they can then go and have calls to action on that content to learn more. Or if they're in there and they want to go to our definitive section on code review, it starts to get them into a better opportunity to learn a little bit more about the content you have available, and then dive deeper and then take themselves throughout the customer journey that way. And then of course, as a quick map here, and again, you don't want to think of everything just in content type. You don't want to think of every blog post as engagement or education, but it gives you a sense of how we kind of think about things here. So typically our education, research and engagement is up in the blog, social, in our resource section. And then further down, we're working with community and support. We have our product section for people who are thinking about buying. And we actually work with a customer advocacy portal, Influitive, so it allows us to really work with our brand advocates.
Thanks, Ryan. So as Ryan was just explaining the last slide, right, we have sweet spots for different communities and domains where we're aligning our content. And in that resources section, where people can enter at all those domains, people can enter at any stage, right? Because customers will be entering in a lot of different stages. A lot of the time, our competitors, too, will be nurturing our potential customers for us, and then they'll enter at a further stage down the path. So as they're entering there, and they can navigate themselves to different stages when they're ready, we also align our paid advertising to those as well, to go right along with organic. So, for example, in our paid manager, PJ, or as we call him, PPCJ, has been doing some really cool stuff with remarketing. So based upon the content that you're looking at, or if you're in the resources section, which we know is primarily going to be a lot of education, research stage content, he's going to follow them with a much different offer, maybe a similar piece of content than somebody who's visiting our product section versus somebody who's gone to a thank you page for a trial further down the funnel. So that's been really successful with our experimentation with that. And then also we, of course, have our sweet spots for different types of paid for different stages of the funnel. And we also are aligning all of our lead scoring and nurturing with this as well. Right? So we have lead scoring algorithms for all of our different products and markets. And this is what helps us understand our best guess at where they might be, right? It's not 100% eye to eye all the time, but it does give us a good sense of the general area. And again, because we have a granular system, it's easier to peg, like at the top of the funnel is probably the most challenging. But our nurture content can align with that, and that's working very well. It's a little bit easier further down the funnel based on certain behaviors. Right? We know if you're trial, you're in evaluation, right? Or if you're an opportunity, or if you become a customer. So scoring is helping us understand where they are. And then our nurture is aligned. Here I color-coded to make it a little bit easier to see. And the scoring dictates the nurture. And other behaviors dictate the nurture. So they're able to move based upon their level of what they're doing. It automatically moves them so they're getting the right content at the right time. And on the roadmap this year, we're also going to be building customer nurture so that with streams for each of these, the 4 customer stages, which we're going to be doing coming up soon that I'm excited about. And just quickly on metrics, so as Ryan had on his slide there, we begin and end with metrics at the end of the day, right? So the example he was showing where he had all these metrics and a couple things in red, right? So we're starting there and understanding, all right, where do we need to improve the most for this product, and focusing, stacking our chips differently so that, we're not going to create the same amount of content for every stage, for every product, right? We need to focus on specific areas that need it the most. And so as we see that and execute at the end of the day, now we have to go back and track that and decide, okay, 2 months from now, we need to adjust, right? And so the way that we measure the effectiveness of all this is for engagement, education and research, blog traffic, the resource section traffic, content downloads, and qualified leads that scored up. Evaluation is product section traffic, trials and trial activations, then down at justification, we're looking at opportunities and opportunity to close one and those conversions. And then for the customers, we have things like renewals, upsell, cross-sell, and then members of our Influitive community, our advocacy program, and then their activities there. So thank you guys. I want to open it up for discussion. Did you have a question?
Yes. What kind of things do you use in your nurture programs for your top of the funnel people that have them either respond to something or exhibit a behavior that tells you when they're moving into the evaluation stage?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, you're doing nurture programs to your top of the funnel people, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you detect when they're moving into the evaluation stage? What do they do
Gotcha.
or tell you or click on? What?
Sure. There's two real ways you do it. The main way is trialing. So once they trial a product in top of the funnel nurture, which is always a secondary call to action, we're not going to shove the trial in your face. You're reading related education and research content, and then there's always a trial hanging out there.
So you give them an opportunity in that educational stuff to level up to the next stage.
Yep, and then also by score. So maybe you didn't try yet, which happens a lot too. We were looking at an example last week where it was the manager, not the end user, and they ended up becoming opportunities for 2 products. That's a different story.
Right.
But they were doing a lot of research, and then they're gonna, when their score hits a certain threshold, we're gonna change their experience. They're starting to get more product-oriented stuff.
This isn't like totally related to the scope of your presentation, but the resource center specifically, like what process did you go through to decide how you were going to make that look? And because I feel like that alone would take a lot of time.
Totally. It does. So we have the person on our team who manages this. It works very closely with Ryan, is our search expert, an SEO person, and so he was in charge of setting up the site architecture, and basically we had older resources sections in the past, but he sort of reorganized it and made it a learning center. So you have a library where you can choose, this is code review, and then he sort of built all that out. And if you look at it too, you start seeing different stages here, right? So people will enter way up in education, what is code review, but then you start seeing other education and research content. And if you go further down the page too, all of the content eventually goes in there, and you can get to case studies, and that's that self-guided experience. So
And
Dan,
is it product, like code review is a product, correct?
it's a solution, yeah.
Okay.
So collaborator would be the product.
Does it start at the solution level when you enter the resource center, or is it even like beyond that?
You can enter at any stage from education. Typically, it's education, research. Those are the most common. But again, you can enter at any stage through search, right? And customers will. So what we need to make sure we do is you can find us through any stage, and then once you get there, you need to make sure that we have the bases covered so you can find the content if you're ready to research down to another stage.
I think one of the big decisions we had to make was like when we're trying to map this stuff up is like we have a blog where we're putting out useful content, and we have a resource section. Like, why do these both exist, right? So we had to kind of think about what is the purpose of each and how do they fit in. We typically find that the blog is kind of our source of being kind of a constant source of good content coming out every day, helps build brand equity, that sort of stuff. But then we're always using, again, a lot more engagement focus there, but it's always linking back. So rather than just linking, when we're talking about code review, rather than just linking back to a product page about our product, we're linking back to a tool about code, article about code review. So what we're able to do there is that we're using the blog just another way of bringing more people into the site. So that's not just people reading on our blog and bouncing who don't know who we are. It's just helping move them in a little bit further.
And this is really a huge organic tool, right? So we purposely are separating it from commercial searches, right? If you're searching for commercial code review tool, you're going to find our product pages, right? Because that's a different part of the journey, right? You're looking for a solution. Versus somebody who's higher up, who's searching what is code review, or things like that, code review best practices, why code review, they're going to come in here, and then we're passing SEO juice back to our product section by linking that and increasing our ranks that way.
Well, I mean like the topical level, like not searching for code review, right? Like searching for.
Right, so you can also be searching
like,
pain points and you'll
awareness.
find it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this may be a stupid question, but is for the non-blog stuff, for ebooks, etc., is everything behind forms, and to what level of pain, I guess?
Sure, so Yes, typically, I mean, we've done experiments with ungating stuff. Typically something like a high value asset like an ebook is going to be gated. But we drive most of our traffic through ungated stuff, and we convert most of our leads through the gated stuff, right? So we need both, and we use, when you come in to a is code review for you, or what is code review, there's going to be a gated asset that's a higher value for you to get into the system. So it's a balance.
And is your ungated stuff sort of linking over to your gated stuff?
Oh yeah.
So like blogs and stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's been a big thing we started to do now. Again, we're talking a little bit like repurposing, right? So it's not even just like getting more about your content, but it's that if you're doing an ebook or typically a PDF, like we're working on now, and like we're less worried about the actual PDF writing as we are like articles and things like that about those topics. So that when people get to those and we're sharing those out socially, we're not just sharing a link to a landing page that gives a few bullet points about an ebook. We're sharing a link to an article that's providing value with a call to action for the ebook. Just a little bit of a difference there, and I think it's had an impact.
One of the other talks was on the advocacy thing, turning your customers into advocates, and you just mentioned that with your Influitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So can we get a twofer here? Can you talk about that a little bit? And like, how do you do it? How do people matriculate into it? What do you get out of it? How do you avoid burning them out? Like, what's going on?
Sure. So we launched it originally last year. Somebody on our team managed it, on the demand gen team. It's really cool. It's at first we weren't as successful until we had a strategy, very similar to what we're talking about with content, because we didn't have a really good strategy going in, and also wasn't segmented really by our different customers, right? Which doesn't really make sense, because if you're a customer of one product, you don't care about stuff that we're giving you for another product. Of course, we segmented it, but also we set it up very similarly to the way automated lead nurturing would work. So, and the way it works is it's basically gamification, right? So you acquire points and earn badges and rewards, and then we'll give you prizes, swag, Amazon gift cards, and basically it's a balance of we use challenges, right? And the first two are all about delivering value, also similar to what we were talking about with content earlier. We're not going to ask them for stuff when they first come in. We're going to deliver value first. So we're doing fun challenges, and we're giving them educational content that's going to help them. And then we have some asks. So, and in the beginning, we're not going to make big asks. It's like follow us on social, little things like that. We set a threshold, and as they start doing more and more, then they unlock the next tier, and then the asks get bigger as they go. They go up another tier, and now we're starting to get to the really big asks, like the case study. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of success with Influitive once we had that strategy in place, and we've had customer quotes flowing in, a number of case studies. We have tons of people who signed up to be on referral call lists. It's really valuable, and ultimately, it's a huge way for us to make sure we're on top of our game down here with showing customer love and keeping that relationship. Casey?
Gary, how do you determine investment in each part of the funnel? Do you use metrics to do that? Do you use product marketing, product management, product marketing to do that, or do you use sales feedback to do that, or all of it?
So all of it really, and ultimately Ryan's working with the demand gen people who focus on each market to figure out, okay, where are those areas that we need to improve the most this month, this quarter, right? So if, depending again on the product, you're going to have different challenges at different stages. So they're not going to stack their chips evenly. They're going to figure out, okay, what's it going to take to, what kind of content do we need? What do we need to invest in to really improve this metric at this stage of the funnel versus, toward the top, right? So it's not there's a lot of factors that come into it, but it's not a simple equation that they're making their best judgments based upon what we need to do.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's things looking at it, I'll walk through with some of the market managers where the gaps are, and they're huge gaps in where they should have some more content. but they got challenges over here we're trying to solve, and we have to kind of prioritize. So we have huge gaps in the fact that just like we just don't have enough content, but it hasn't really articulated to any like negative impact yet. But we know we need to fill that, because if we're going to solve this challenge up here, hopefully we're going to be bringing more people in, and then we want to make sure we have content there. So again, I think the challenge it always runs into is that you always want to keep bringing more people in, so a lot of people just keep focusing their content effort there. I think this has given us the chance to take a step back and start to fill in some of those gaps that we might have had.
And it is a bit of an art, really, because we start and end with metrics, right, in our science, and we're constantly improving our content based upon how it's performing. But we're starting with the metrics, and then the art is taking all this stuff and figuring out how do we go apply that and make smarter content, and then we measure how that did, again, with the metrics. Does that answer your question, Casey? Yep.
Yeah, so I was wondering, speaking of metrics, how you measure content engagement.
Sure.
I'm just curious if you have a standard index that you use. I mean, there are all sorts of different types of pieces of content, and so how do you determine if a piece of content is performing well?
We have a lot of metrics for that. So some of the main ones, we're looking at organic traffic always, looking at social shares, we're looking at time on page. We have a pretty cool tool called Filament, which I like to fiddle around with, which gives you engagement scores, right? And gives you some cool metrics like percent scroll, like how far down the page did they go, how long did they stay, what percentage shared this piece of content to the number that visited, which is really a good indicator. If somebody's willing to go and say, share this with the world, that's to me, a big engagement sign. We also are looking at click-through rates on all of our ads and our emails and number of content downloads.
Yeah, I think the challenge is just rolling it up into a single metric, because there are so many different types.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely always just at the high level traffic, but like for example, sometimes it's like if we do like an ebook, right? Like again, we have these specific goals we're trying to do. So we created an ebook recently where it really was designed to set up in a way to help kind of drive trials. Like it was really, the way it was written was like that was the goal. It wasn't just engage, wasn't just inform. It was really set up to say, here's a problem, here's how our solution helps. And so when we do those campaigns, we look at it after the fact and we can measure based off that. Again, that's beyond kind of just the high level engagement. Is the content resonating? It's actually, okay, we create this thing knowing that it could have that impact. Is it going to have that impact?
Yeah.
Exactly, and it depends on what the objective is. It could be, a lot of time ebooks are lead gen. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more people in the funnel. So that's where if it's that stage, we're going to focus more on that metric.
Does that metric that you just mentioned take into account, or you're tracking separately, how many pieces of content a potential buyer might interact with before a purchase?
It does not,
Okay.
no. We do some manual stuff for that in Marketo, but it does not. We also track opportunities to influence with all of our content. And that, well, of course, not our anonymous web article views, but all of our gated content, all of our email database content, we're looking at opportunities to influence. So that's a really big key metric that we look at the end of the day, is how much did this influence pipeline. And we also added customer journey, all the stages to each Salesforce campaign. So sales can see that too, but also we can get an understanding of how many of these content downloads we get per stage and how many of those influence opportunities.
I work for an email testing company, and we've been really focused at the top of the funnel lately. Well, for 10 years, not lately. And it's worked for us. Like, people that are coming in from our blog retain at about a 40% higher rate than coming in from any other source that are converting for us. So we're really trying to now target our content towards our customers to get them to retain. What we're guessing is that people that are coming in through our blog, they're knowledgeable about why they need to test their emails, and that's why they're using us on a continual basis and retaining at a higher rate than other people that are coming in via other sources. We're kind of at a loss, though, of how to use our content to maintain this retention. Like, do we have our content in app, or is that not great to have them leaving the app, or are we doing it via emails? I don't know if you guys have any insights on what's worked for you.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. We have some content in products sometimes, but it really depends on the situation. For example, open source tools, right? We're trying to convert them to a pro product. So we'll have 10 reasons why to go pro, or we'll have an ebook that they'll fill out because we don't know who they are yet because it's a free open source tool. So yes, we'll have that, and then of course we're going to have documentation for inside the product for customers for SaaS tools too. If you have a customer webinar or something, we'll put that in as well. In-app, yeah, there's a few things we've done. We haven't done too much in terms of like putting ebooks and stuff like that in there,
content.
but they are able to find them in a number of different ways. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I can speak from past experience before coming to SmartBear. You know, it won't come to surprise you, but like email newsletter, like for us, like even though you know getting people to subscribe is a way of generating leads, like it's also a way of getting that in front of your customers to identify like people who are interested in more education, more like they're people who are the young people who are just getting it because they're customers. They're actively subscribing. Like it's a much different audience. And it's a great way to kind of get people who, because there's many people who just aren't interested in getting more of that education, or you don't want to distract them with it. But I think it's a great way of kind of building that database of really, and then you can segment that audience out, right? I mean, using any tool, you can segment that out to say, okay, here's the content we're delivering to our customers, and maybe it's on a monthly basis, and you factor it out that way. And I'm sure a lot of the stuff you're putting on the blog can probably be repurposed easily for customers as well.
I think we're out of time. Thank you guys very much.